A lot of the world is guessing what has happened to Qin Gang from Beijing to Washington to Canberra. He has been missing for the past month. There are rumours of an extramarital affair, illness, potentially a power struggle at the top of the Chinese Communist Party. But yesterday, Chinese President Xi Jinping pulled the plug on his career, and it was a fast rise for Qin Gang. He was only in the post for 6 months as foreign minister, but now he is out, and Wang Yi, his predecessor, is back in.
Yeah. Qin, though, remains on the State Council, so does it suggest that he still holds some support from Xi Jinping?
This is one of the tricky things analysing the tea leaves of Chinese politics. The fact that he's still on the State Council could mean one of two things. Firstly, that there is an active investigation into whatever allegations have been raised against him, and they don't want to come out with a conclusion before those investigations are finalised. Or, secondly, that there hasn't quite matched the Chinese processes for removing someone from the State Council. It's not the role yesterday of the Standing Committee to remove someone from that. Another meeting has to be convened. So I think it's wait and see at the moment. It's anyone's guess. But certainly the signs are not good for his continuing political career.
Yeah, and the very fact that that meeting was convened the way it was is highly unusual in Chinese politics anyway.
That's right. It was an emergency meeting convened within 24 hours notice. It almost never happens. Most of them at least a week or at least a few days notice. But this one was, they rapidly met and made a decision on the fate of Qin Gang, and also on the People's Bank of China new governor.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a moment, but let's look at Wang Yi. He's well past retirement age in China, although that doesn't stand for much sometimes. Do you think this is just a temporary appointment?
Again, it's hard to say. Wang Yi is now, at least on paper, the most powerful Chinese foreign minister in decades. He holds the top 2 diplomatic positions, which is very rare in the Chinese system. Whether he wants to hold on to that and whether it's some sort of counterweight to Xi Jinping's dominance is one question, or is he just a stopgap solution while they find the next up-and-coming foreign minister? Wang Yi and Xi Jinping do not come from the same faction. They are from different parts of the Chinese Communist Party. And, you know, really, they haven't necessarily been that close throughout Wang Yi's 10 years in power. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with him, because he's now, in some ways, sort of emblematic of this counterweight to Xi Jinping's growing power.
And it might be that Xi Jinping doesn't want that, because we do know he doesn't like or countenance much sort of opposition within the Communist Party.
Well, certainly, and it remains an open question to what damage this removal of Qin Gang has done to Xi Jinping. He's been missing for a month, but once the questions sort of reached a crescendo over his future, he moved decisively to remove him. And, you know, it had to be said that at this point, the idea of China continuing to go without an official foreign minister was no longer tenable. They just needed someone to talk to other world leaders. But nonetheless, you know, Xi Jinping has this ability to cauterize these kind of wounds like no other Chinese leader has. And so how he plays out from here, could he emerge from a position of strength or, you know, who knows, a position of weakness?
Yeah, they'd start to lose that. Let's talk about Wang Yi, because, of course, when he was foreign minister, relations with Australia were rather tricky. They have got quite a lot better in recent months. What might his return mean for Australia?
Wang Yi is a known quantity for Australia. He's had a lot of dealings with foreign ministers, from Julie Bishop through to Penny Wong. I think it's going to be much the same overall. That is, this kind of China clearly wants to see a repair in the relationship. It wants to see improved ties. I can't see that changing in the short term. What's interesting about Qin Gang is that he was kind of a moderate voice. He was a sort of erudite, urbane kind of leader. Wang Yi also has that reputation, but as the wolf warrior school of Chinese diplomacy has gone on, he's also been happy to ride that to prominence. And so the only real reflection I think we can take from this is that the ongoing instability in the Chinese system is not good for Beijing, and it's not good for the world in how it deals with China, because you need point people to talk to. And having a foreign minister in there for 6 months, well, that's not an ideal example to set.
No, exactly. All right, you mentioned the central governor who was replaced. Do you think this is more about optics given the struggling Chinese economy, or has he been brought in to make some big changes?
You've got to remember that in China, the central bank governor is not independent of the government. They sit under the state council. So the state council decides that stimulus has got to be unleashed, or perhaps the interest rates need to remain on hold. That's what will happen. He's got a reputation as a technocrat. He's got a solid pair of hands, very well experienced in financial service regulation. He's going to need all of those skills to try and rein in what is a downturn in China. There's no other way of sugarcoating it. They're looking at deflation. The economy has not bounced back in the way that they would like it to. People are nervous, they're not spending, and they're certainly not buying property. And in China, that's a huge driver of economic growth. So he's going to have to use all the tools at his disposal, both regulatory and stimulatory, to try and get the Chinese economy moving again.
Yeah, and we've talked before about the flight of money out of China, property being purchased elsewhere. The property sector in China, it's hard to see how that's going to recover.
It is. I mean, it's just been dented by huge loss of consumer confidence. The reality is that people are not willing to buy at the moment because you've had property scandals and you've got a huge amount of debt. And right now, people are coming out of COVID wondering when the next crisis is going to happen. The solution in the past has been to pump money into the sector. But the problem is with that is that you have these very large companies with not a lot of actual assets behind them. And so that solution that China has had before is highly risky. And it's a really wicked problem that their policymakers are now contending with.
Eric, always great to chat. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Beverly. Great to chat.